call today. Ladies, I think this is a first for the morning show, is having two guests on a Zoom call. Mrs. Cheryl Warner is the superintendent of Warrensburg Latham Schools, and good to see you again, Mrs. Warner. How are you today?
Good morning, Seth. I'm doing great.
Thanks for coming on with us. And Mrs. Jill Reedy is with the Regional Office of Education. Good to see you, Mrs. Reedy. Thanks for making time for us.
Good morning.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll tell you what, Mrs. Warner, you tell us about why Mrs. Reedy is with us today, because it kind of sounds like a big collaboration and a kind of culmination of things that led to an event last week. What's going on?
Very much so. For the last 4 to 3 years, the Regional Office of Education, which is Regional Office number 39, and Jill Reedy as the Regional Superintendent, has been collaborating with the 12 districts within that region. And we've been working diligently on safety protocols and crisis prevention. And kind of where everything has come to fruition is the final stages of what do we actually do post-crisis. So I thought Jill would be a great guest to be on today. We'll talk a little bit about what has been occurring in Warrensburg, and then she can kind of give a broader perspective from the regional aspect. And then we can get down to the nitty-gritty of what we did last week, which was kind of this culmination of 3 years of work.
Sure. Well, Mrs. Reedy, your side of this whole thing.
So I thank you for allowing me to be on here. It's a great opportunity to share all the work that we've been doing. But yeah, I'm really coming from a regional approach. We do a lot at the Regional Office of Education to support our schools, particularly in school safety. And what we'll talk about today is really working together and planning together and bringing all the agencies in to help support our school systems. It's just been a great opportunity.
Sure. So I'm sure this collaboration from your side goes far beyond working with just Warrensburg. I mean, I'm sure you have, dozen or so schools to keep track of and work with in an effort like this. Do you mind speaking to that at all?
Yeah, so we cover about 11 public school districts in Macon and Piatt counties. So you're talking about 18,000 students. And so it's a lot when you're talking about school safety and planning. And really, when we started getting into school safety, we realized how important it was to bring law enforcement in, fire, emergency management, and how we've been working in silos for so long. And as educators, this is not our area of expertise. And so to be able to bring in those other agencies and first responders has been really powerful.
Was there, whether it's a local thing or whether it was something nationally, was there a catalyst to getting this planning started? And what did you learn about the plans that were in place? I mean, you talked about being in silos. How about that side of it?
Well, it was about October of 22. We met and I brought all of the districts together. We had all the districts represented and law enforcement joined us and emergency management, like I said. And we got together and we started talking about, are we prepared for maybe not if, but when something happens, heaven forbid, that, are we prepared to handle the aftermath of a crisis or emergency situation? And when we started talking, the looks around the room, nobody really wanted to admit that maybe we're not as well prepared. And I think there was some comfort in realizing, okay, I'm not in this alone, and that the binder of plans I have on my shelf that nobody really knows about, right, are not going to be effective in the event of an emergency. And that was the moment we realized we were really underprepared. And having the support of law enforcement and the others in the room, we looked around and said, okay, this is definitely something we can't plan alone. And if an emergency happens, it's not going to be an isolated incident. And a district like Warrensburg is going to need outside support. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it really started. And from there, we've been working for 3 years now on finding ways to support one another.
So at that point, does it become a learning process to say, to get in front of someone and have them tell you what you need in a plan? Do you know what you need in a plan and you just got to put it together? Where are you at when you get this thing started?
So we're very fortunate that there are nationally research-based plans and models that we can work off of. Our region in particular has really looked at the model that's called I Love You Guys, which is based on research in relation to active shooter and intruder situations within school districts. This is a model that works not only in pre-K schools, but municipalities and businesses as well. It's it's modeled in a manner that it should be universal. So you should be able to take aspects of that plan and make it work almost anywhere. And that's really what I've been doing as a superintendent the last 3 years, taking the national research-based model and adapting it to fit my particular school district, students, staff, and the partnerships that we've been formed. And you heard Jill talk about no crisis can really be covered by one district alone. Moving into this, it was really critical, and we realized this very soon. Partnerships with other districts and municipalities and agencies are absolutely critical. And the fact that we practice this together is critical. So, for example, my district partnership is Maroa Forsyth. We have the exact same reunification site. The plan that I've developed is a plan that they will also utilize in case of their emergency. And the exercises that I've done with my staff, they have followed along and been partners with us in that. We know in a true crisis situation, our own staff may not be the individuals that we're relying upon in the aftermath, right? In terms of actually reunifying students with parents. They might be held up at the crisis site or whatever the situation is. And therefore, this partnership and collaboration is absolutely key. Moving forward in this process, it wasn't just about one particular school district being up and ready and prepared. It was really about how do we all assist each other in developing this plan, because this is hard work. None of us went to school to be safety experts, but that's what we've become as school administrators.
Mrs. Reedy, anything to add on to that?
It's just been critical. I think the more through our planning process, we realized every meeting we would meet and realize how little we know, right? And how much more we have to do. And so it's slow and steady work. And some of it's messy because, we're unsure in how to do it. But each time, for example, we've done tabletop exercises where we walk through. And I think that was one I remember. It was kind of this aha moment of busing. If an emergency were to happen, even if it were a chemical spill or active shooter or something on site, that we may not be able to get to the buses. So how important it is to have memorandums of understanding with a partner district to be able to utilize their buses. And so we started developing those MOUs and those plans, and even looking at reunification sites of what is a good reunification site and why does it need to be away from the school, and all of those aspects, things that we never thought about. And I think law enforcement too, they've got to hear our side of the story, because I think we expect law enforcement to come in and save the day, and we realize they're going to handle the emergency. We own the children, and so how can we work together and support one another? So just that relationship building with the different agencies has been so valuable.
That's Mrs. Jill Reedy with the Regional Office of Education, along with Mrs. Cheryl Warner, who is the superintendent of Warrensburg Latham Schools, our guest on the Zoom call here today on the morning show. So I'm sure you don't want to give everything away to the community about your plans and all of that, but at some point, communication with the community and parents and all those things probably has to come into play. Where does that fit into all of this?
You're right, Seth. And it's critical that we have a public information officer as part of this universal plan. So we have assigned individuals for every single role of post-crisis, right? Which would include who is in charge of that communication hub, and that person having an entire team of what can and how regularly should information be shared publicly about how you can get safely to your children to reunify in times of a crisis. We know by looking at any critical situation that has occurred in schools in the last 10 years, the breakdown and mistakes are usually in communication, right? We were on a different radio show yesterday, and we had Lieutenant Ethel with us from Decatur Police Department. He spoke to this exclusively. You would think that all municipalities and agencies would be very well connected when these things occur, but that's not necessarily the case. We have to be so much more diligent about making sure we have a communication network for us to be able to share information. I'll let Mrs. Reedy kind of share about Crisis Go. This is just one of the tools that we utilize to help all of the various districts, agencies, law enforcement, EMA, be able to communicate with each other within seconds.
So yeah, one of our goals with our team was to work on that communication piece because we know that's usually the first breakdown in any emergency. And so we researched and came up with an app called Crisis Go that would allow our reunification team to at least contact each other. We had this great plan and then realized, okay, if we have to enact or call out a reunification team to one of our local districts, we really didn't even know how to do that because we all communicate differently. Police have their radio system and fire have theirs, and so this app allows us to talk to each other. And so, not saying it's perfect, but it has been a tool that we can use to make sure that we are prepared for that piece, knowing that that's probably the most important thing in any situation is clear communication among agencies. So we've done that. We even purchased a reunification trailer, we call it, where we hold all the supplies, where we can send that out, and we store it at the Highway County Department, and it can go out to any of our districts and create an on-site reunification.
Gotcha. Ladies, when we come back from the break, I thought we'd get into the event last week, the execution of all this planning. But did we miss any aspect of getting to that planning or to that practice run of last week? Did we miss anything that led up to all that you want to put out there for us?
I think another good point to review is just the amount of intense training that's gone on that has been offered at either our regional level, the state level, and now we are so advanced in our planning that we're at the phase where we are training others. We're going to state level conferences and presenting our plans to others because the goal is to be able to help others to do this work as well.
Mrs. Reedy, how about you?
Same thing. I think it's important that we share what we're doing and help others because it definitely cannot be done alone.
Very good. Well, I'll tell you what, let's come back and hear about last week's execution of all this planning and the trial run that you did. Again, that's Mrs. Cheryl Warner, Superintendent of Warrensburg-Latham Schools, Mrs. Jill Reedy with the Regional Office of Education, our guests on the Zoom call. More to come with them on the morning show.
WHOW. Now.com.
Let's check the markets on the RFD Radio Network. I'm DeLaw's Yonke. Corn and soybeans are a little bit higher. March corn up 1 3/4, $4.98. May up 2, 5.10 3/4. July up 2 1/4, $5.13 1/2. March contract did hit $5.02 in the overnight. March soybeans up 3/4, $10.36 3/4. May up 1/2, $10.53 1/4. July up 3/4, $10.69. March wheat down 3, $5.97. KC down 3 3/4, $6.17 1/2. Livestock were mixed. April lean hogs up 152, $94.12. April live cattle down $1.05, $193.20. March feeders up 117, $267.52. Crude oil up 73 cents, 71.47. The Dow is down 87. It's the RFD Radio Network.
Spring will soon be here, and that means planting season. Now is the time to finalize your spring fertilizer and inputs. Hi, I'm Sean Bites from Maroa Ag, just north of Maroa. Maroa Ag has provided Central Illinois farmers with custom application, crop nutrients, and crop protection products for over 30 years. If you're looking for a business partner that will help you maximize your yield as you prepare for spring planting, come see us at Maroa Ag now. We're here to give you the one-on-one service you want and expect. Maroa Ag, your partner in the field this spring.
Are you wanting to learn more about your health and wellness options in Central Illinois? Visit stealthwellness.com or click on my banner ad at DeWittDailyNews.com. Let me, Dr. Bill Byers, show you some simple, under-the-radar ways to improve and take control of your health.
Hi, I'm Brett with Central Cremation Center, and we proudly serve all of Central Illinois. We offer the most affordable and convenient arrangements in the area with plans starting at just $795. Many of our plans are available by clicking our icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, a good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. Mrs. Cheryl Warner is the superintendent of Warrensburg-Latham Schools, and Mrs. Jill Reedy with the Regional Office of Education, our guest today on the Zoom call. And Mrs. Warner, I'll let you tell us about the Macon County reunification exercise that was done last week. What kind of went into all of this, and what was it like?
Sure. So last Wednesday, we held basically a reunification exercise for my district. However, we invited all Macon County related districts, partners, and agencies to be involved in this. My district had a pre-planned early dismissal that day. So we used this as a professional development activity for our staff. We had approximately 300 adults there, which would have included all Warrensburg-Latham staff, along with an additional about 90 to 100 volunteers from other agencies, school districts, law enforcement, over 50 law enforcement officers from all over. This was not by any means exclusive to Warrensburg. We had Decatur Police Department, we had the Park Districts, we had Macon County Sheriff's Department, Logan County. We had Illinois Emergency Management from throughout multiple counties as well, Macon, Logan, DeWitt, and also the Illinois EMA there to do a formal evaluation of us. So we attempted to basically take a crisis situation in school and planned for an evacuation and reunification at our reunification center, which for my school district is Life Foursquare Church, as well as for Maroa Forsyth. So we did not have students involved in this activity because we felt it was very critical for my staff and all of the volunteers to have a very firm grasp of what this exercise looks like, be able to do a lot of problem solving based on the designated roles and process without putting any kind of concerns on students, because we were practicing a high crisis situation. And we also did practice for quite a few surprises to occur that the staff weren't aware of. And we just didn't really want that exposure to students at this point. Now, long-term goal would be that we do this exercise again with our staff, students, and parents that have volunteered to be part of this activity. But last week was really about delving high depth into the roles and the process and making sure everybody was comfortable. So we had taken that universal model of the standard reunification plan and put it into action at our reunification site with all of the various volunteers and staff. We did spend approximately 2 hours reunifying what we would consider about 60 student identities, took lots of notes, did lots of problem solving. We had law enforcement there learning from the process as well as representatives from 9 other school districts.
Well, are you at liberty to share what you learned and what you took away from the event?
So yes, and this is not the first time we've practiced this. I've had my staff out on this at this site multiple times. We've also done a small scale practice on campus. So by no means is it our first practice, but it would be our most critical and largest scale. We did walk away with, a handful of surprises of things that we did not anticipate. Some of them were technology related. Not surprising to hear that kind of thing. Some of them were crowd control related. I'll give you one particular example. Our parents were not supposed to enter the church until the doors were unlocked, right? Now, in a true crisis situation, we know that parents are going to be, their goal is to get to their student as soon as they can, make sure their student is okay. Our doors were locked because our staff were still getting in position to run the reunification. Quickly, what we realized is that our parents were actually walking around, and remember, this was a snowy, icy day, to the other side of the church to try to attempt to get in other doors. That was a great test of my staff and the reunification site, because that would absolutely happen to us. Absolutely. So we were able to kind of think through some of those things and anticipate things that we hadn't necessarily planned for, as well as the crises that we did plan for, and be able to see how my staff handled those.
Mrs. Reedy, any thoughts from you on what you observed that day?
Yes, I said to Cheryl 5 minutes in, I've learned so much already, right? And so I had an opportunity to sit in the incident command center. So Lieutenant Eric Ethel with the Decatur Police Department was running that, and it was very interesting like Cheryl said, immediately from the get-go, just from the parking lot, what we learned of how to place our signs to make sure it was clear. Because we've seen in some real life incidences with recent events where parents will pull up, which is understandable in a panic. They'll pull up and park anywhere, and maybe leave their cars to get to the site to get to their child. And so we have to prepare for that. And so even as small scale as we were, we realized traffic flow was really important. And so immediately, where we need to put more officers or firemen to help direct traffic with that. And like Cheryl said, we saw how few parents there were, or, role-playing parents in this exercise. So, multiply that by 10 and it could be very serious. So lots of lessons learned, a lot of things that went well, that were great. And our goal from a regional level was be able to send our reunification team out to any site, whether it's Warrensburg site or another one, and be able to fill in those universal roles because we've all been trained in the same methods. So it was a great opportunity. Lots of lessons learned.
Mrs. Warner, where do we go next? What's next for this whole thing?
So we will continue to refine the plan, and that's the thing about safety and crisis planning. It's not a plan that sits on the shelf. It's a living, breathing document. We're faced with new challenges in relation to school safety and crisis all the time. So we will actually have a regional meeting this week where we go back and we review the exercise with the other 10 districts within our region. We also meet monthly where we bring in the other agencies, law enforcement. We'll do a formal debriefing, and then we'll also go through the evaluation from the exercise from the Illinois EMA and see what kind of feedback that they have given to us as well. Along with, the little things that occurred last Wednesday that immediately we realized, okay, here's a little tweak in the plan, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that just needs to be visited on a regular basis.
Well, yes, and it's one of those things that we've heard from at least law enforcement that visits with us on the show. As soon as you learn something about crisis management, some new development comes along, and a new wrinkle that you're talking about that you've got to plan for. So that's the example of always having to plan and keep these things up to date and continue to talk about it.
Absolutely. And I think our goal would be, any district that's in the beginning stages of their planning right now, we're here to be able to assist them. Everything that we've written and developed has been shared with the other districts, as well as other agencies and businesses, hospitals, facilities within our county that would like kind of a place of where do we start to develop this type of plan. We don't have to recreate the wheel. We can kind of take things and tailor them to fit our environment and our staff. Which helps with not only, smooth actions post-crisis, but with prevention as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, ladies, I hate to do this to us. I got to cut the conversation off, but good conversation nonetheless. Thanks for doing this with us today.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you,
Again,
Seth.
Mrs. Cheryl Warner and Jill Reedy, our guests on the Zoom call today. The morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube. Brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin insurance agent in Clinton. Network news on the way on the morning show.